Enter a world where reality warps and fear feels familiar. Each eerie tale blurs the line between nightmare and truth, inviting you to explore the strange, the supernatural, and the psychologically twisted. Dim the lights and take a glimpse into madness. In the quietest corners of small-town America, legacies are measured in memories and photographs, the tangible proof that one existed at all. But for one aging lawman, the line between being remembered and forgotten blurs when he discovers something impossible within the frames hanging on the wall. Tonight, we offer you a glimpse into madness where duty never ends, not even in death. Sheriff Hank Dwyer's boots echoed down the empty corridor of the Millhaven Sheriff's Department. Sunday mornings were always quiet, just how he liked them. 39 years on the force, and silence had become his most trusted companion. He ran his weathered fingers along the wall, feeling the slight bumps where picture frames hung in perfect succession. The department's legacy wall, 10 photographs spanning nearly a century and a half. Every new sheriff, a new photograph. The whole department, immortalized. In 3 months, they'd add another. Only Hank wouldn't be at the center. He paused at his favorite, 1986, his first appearance, standing awkwardly as a rookie deputy beside old Sheriff Wilkins. Young, eager, remembered. Morning, Sheriff. Deputy Madison Reed stood before him, fresh-faced and smiling. 26 years old. Just transferred from the city. She reminded him of himself, back when the badge still gleamed with promise instead of obligation. Morning, Madison. Bit early for you, isn't it? Thought I'd get the lay of the land before Monday officially starts. She gestured to the wall. History lesson? Something like that. Hank straightened his back, summoning the authoritative posture he'd perfected over decades. Come on, I'll give you the tour. He led her down the corridor, pointing out each frame with grandfatherly pride. That's 1954, Sheriff Dawson, mean old bastard, from what I heard. And here, 1973, Sheriff Miller. He hired me as a night dispatcher when I was just 19. Madison leaned in, studying each image with genuine interest. Hank felt a small surge of satisfaction. At least someone cared about the legacy. And there you are, she said, pointing to his rookie self. You've been here a while. Longest-serving sheriff in Millhaven history, he said, unable to keep the pride from his voice. Not that anyone's counting. Madison moved methodically down the wall, studying each photo with the careful eye of a trained observer. Suddenly, she stopped, her finger hovering over the glass of the 1999 departmental photo. Who's that? She asked. Hank squinted. That's Donna Reeves, best dispatcher we ever had. No, behind you, the tall deputy. Hank leaned closer. There, standing directly behind his younger self, was a deputy he didn't immediately recognize. Tall, lean, with a strangely blank expression. He wore an old-style uniform, nothing like the updated ones they'd switched to in the 90s. Oh, that's... Hank paused, mind drawing an unexpected blank. That's... He trailed off, suddenly unsure. The face was familiar, yet not. Madison moved to the next photo. 2005. He's here too. Same position. She walked back, checking 1986. And here. A chill crawled up Hank's spine. And here, she said, pointing to the 1973 photo. Exactly the same. That's impossible, Hank muttered, moving closer. But there he was, the same deputy, the same stance, the same blank expression, the same outdated uniform, in every single photo. Must be a family resemblance, Hank said, forcing a laugh that sounded hollow even to his ears. Probably father and son. But even as he said it, he knew it wasn't true. The deputy looked identical in every photo, not just similar. Same face, same uniform, same eyes that seemed to stare not at the camera but through it. Madison glanced at her watch. I should get going. Thanks for the tour, Sheriff. Hank barely registered her departure. He stood transfixed before the wall, staring at a man who couldn't possibly exist. After she left, he carefully removed each frame from the wall. One by one, he extracted the photographs, turning them over to read the handwritten names on the back. Sheriff Thomas Wheeler, Deputy Alan Barnes, Deputy Mary Ann Hollister, Dispatcher Helen Grant. Every name meticulously recorded, every name except one. The tall deputy was never listed, never acknowledged, not once in a century and a half of carefully preserved history. As dusk settled over the station, Hank returned the photos to their frames and the frames to the wall. His mind raced with possibilities, each more implausible than the last. When he turned to leave, something caught his eye. A hat sat on the rack by the door, weathered brown leather with a wide brim. An old-style deputy's hat, nothing like the department's current uniform. Hank froze. It hadn't been there when he arrived. Cautiously, as if approaching a wild animal, he lifted the hat from the rack. The leather was cracked with age, but well-maintained. Inside the brim, a name had been written in faded ink, too smudged to make out completely. He placed the hat on his desk, locked up the station, and headed home, his mind churning with unanswered questions. Morning light filtered through the blinds of the sheriff's office as Hank unlocked the door. He stopped short, staring at the empty desk. The hat was gone. "Morning, Sheriff." Deputy Collins nodded as he passed with a steaming cup of coffee. "Collins," Hank called after him. "Did you move a hat from my desk?" The deputy turned, brow furrowed. "No, sir." Hank's gaze drifted to the hat rack by the door. There it sat. The weathered deputy's hat hung neatly as if it had never been moved. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for it. This time he would secure it properly. As he walked down the corridor toward the evidence locker, his eyes caught on one of the photographs. The mysterious deputy stared back at him, and for the first time, Hank noticed the hat. The same hat, perched atop the deputy's head in the ancient style no one wore anymore. He nearly dropped it. The evidence locker was cool and quiet. Hank logged the hat as found property, locked it in a clear plastic bag, and secured it on the middle shelf. He hesitated before leaving, double-checking the lock. His next stop was the Millhaven Historical Society, a grandiose name for what amounted to a room above the library staffed by volunteers 3 days a week. Miss Eleanor Delancey had been the town's history teacher for 40 years before retiring. If anyone would know about a mysterious deputy, it would be her. "Sheriff Dwyer," she greeted him warmly. "What brings you to my dusty domain?" "The department photos," he said, getting straight to the point. "I noticed something odd." He showed her a photograph on his phone, a picture he'd taken of the 1973 departmental photo, zoomed in on the mystery deputy. "Do you recognize this man?" Miss Delancey adjusted her glasses, squinting at the screen. Her expression changed subtly, a flicker of something crossing her features. "Funny how people come and go," she said softly. "But the photos never really change, do they?" "What does that mean?" She handed back the phone without answering. "Have you checked the newspaper archives? They keep everything since 1896 in the basement." The library basement smelled of mildew and forgotten things. Hank spent hours scrolling through microfiche, hunting for, he wasn't even sure what, a clue, a name, an explanation. He was about to give up when a headline from 1911 caught his eye. "Deputy killed in line of duty." Emmett Graves shot during bank standoff. His breath caught in his throat. The accompanying photograph showed a tall, lean man in an old-style uniform. The same blank expression, the same old-style hat, the same man who stood behind every sheriff in every departmental photo for over a century. The article described how Deputy Emmett Graves had been shot during a standoff at Millhaven Savings and Loan. He died instantly. The last line noted that he was the first, and as Hank suddenly realized, the only deputy ever to die in the line of duty in Millhaven's history. Hank's hands shook as he printed the article. On his way out, he paused by the reference desk. "Miss Delancey," he asked, his voice barely above a whisper, "has any other Millhaven deputy ever died in the line of duty after 1911? "Why, no," she replied without hesitation. "Just the one. Poor Emmett Graves." The station was quiet when Hank returned. He walked slowly past the wall of photos, seeing them with new eyes. In each one, standing silently behind the sheriff, Emmett Graves, not aging, not changing, just watching. In his office, Hank headed straight for the small bathroom, splashing cold water on his face. When he looked up at the mirror, he wasn't alone. Standing behind him, just visible in the reflection, was a tall figure in an old-style uniform. Hank whirled around. The bathroom was empty. His heart pounding, he returned to his desk. The phone rang, making him jump. "Sheriff Dwyer," he answered, his voice steadier than he felt. "Sheriff, we've got a domestic at the old Whitaker place," the dispatcher said. Neighbors heard shouting, then gunshots. "I'm on my way." As Hank drove toward the Whitaker farmhouse, his mind replayed everything he'd learned. Emmett Graves, dead since 1911, yet somehow present in every departmental photo since. And no deputy had died in the line of duty since him. The Whitaker place came into view, a dilapidated farmhouse set back from the road. Hank parked at the end of the gravel drive and approached cautiously, hand on his holster. The front door hung partially open. "Sheriff's Department," he called. "Anyone home?" Silence. He pushed the door open wider with his foot, drawing his weapon. "Sheriff's Department? Frank Whitaker, you in here?" Something creaked upstairs. Hank moved toward the staircase, ears straining for any sound. Halfway up he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a shotgun being racked. Then a voice, low, calm. "Down!" Without thinking, Hank dropped to the stairs. Boom! The shotgun blast tore through the air where his head had been a second earlier. Plaster and wood splinters rained down as Hank rolled, taking cover behind the banister. "Frank, put the weapon down!" he shouted. Another shot answered him, splintering the railing near his head. As Hank prepared to return fire, movement caught his eye. At the top of the stairs stood a figure, tall, lean, wearing an old-style deputy's uniform. The hat sat low over his face, his eyes unreadable in the shadow of the brim. Deputy Emmett Graves. For a heartbeat, their eyes met. Then Graves turned toward the bedroom where Frank Whitaker was barricaded. The ghostly deputy raised his hand, not in warning, but in salute. A third shotgun blast ripped through the house. When the smoke cleared, the figure was gone. Frank Whitaker surrendered 10 minutes later, sobbing about voices in his head. The shotgun, when recovered, had a cracked stock and a bent barrel, damages that made it a miracle it hadn't exploded in Whitaker's hands. A miracle. Or something else. Back at the station, Hank walked past the wall of photos with new reverence. He stopped before the 1911 photograph, gently adjusting the frame. "Thanks," he whispered. The hat rack stood empty when he returned to his office. The evidence locker, when checked, remained securely locked, but the plastic bag that had held the deputy's hat was empty. That evening, Mayor Peterson stopped by, finding Hank staring out the window at the setting sun. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Peterson joked. Hank smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." "Listen, Hank, I've been meaning to ask. Isn't it about time you retire? The sooner you retire, the sooner we can start fishing like we always talked about." 3 months ago, those words would have filled Hank with dread, the fear of being forgotten, of fading away like all the sheriffs before him. Now, they felt like release. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Let's go fishing." 2 months later, Sheriff Elena Martinez tapped a nail into the wall and hung the newest departmental photo in line with the others. The staff smiled proudly around her, a new era for the Millhaven Sheriff's Department. What she didn't notice, what no one ever seemed to notice until it was pointed out, was the tall figure standing just behind her. Not quite in focus, not quite out of focus. A man in a faded deputy's hat, hands folded, eyes steady. Deputy Emmett Graves. Still on duty after all these years, and if you check the back of the photo, there's still no name for him. But now one person remembers. Far away on a quiet lake, fishing rod in hand, former Sheriff Hank Dwyer glances occasionally at the horizon and tips his hat to the memory of the deputy who never left his post. Some duties, it seems, don't end with death. Some guardians never stop watching. Legacy isn't measured in plaques or retirement watches, but in the silent vigil we keep for those who come after us. In Millhaven, one deputy stands eternal guard, a spectral reminder that true protection transcends both time and the grave itself.